coming to our weekly review. Very happy to see all of you, and let's all wish each a healthy and a happy week and months ahead. So today we're continuing to review the Jing Wondrous Lotus Sutra, or the teachings. And today we have a lot of topics to cover, so let us move right on. What we're going to talk about this week is we're going to talk about the progress that Master had taught us in the past week. And I think it has been a journey of discovery. I think that, as I mentioned before, that the morning Dharma talk has been a staple for Master to convey her internal feelings, not just about cultivation, not just about spiritual practice, but it's also about how she felt. And as the Master is trying to make the world better, she began to recognize and understand more and more. And she shared with us via the morning Dharma talk. And how does she do that? Well, through explaining the current events and tying the current events together with the principles. And she was able to, give us a look into what is the inner thinking of our Master. And I found that to be very heartwarming and very touching, because all the things that we heard about the Buddha was only through the words that were left in the sutras. And we see the words, but we don't hear the sounds. We see the words, but we don't see the expressions on the face. But now we get all of that here. So I think it's more expressive of what this world has become in the eyes of our Master Cheng Yen. So what we're going to talk about today is the progress that we have seen in this week and in the Dharma talk, and also seeing the journey that Master takes us on in her own, the way that she discovered, or the way that she sees the world. So the very first thing that we see is step number 1. And I think this is a journey of various steps. Okay, this is a journey of many different steps. And I see this as a journey also of the Buddha, and also of the thinking behind all the skillful means and the truthful teachings and all of this. Okay, so the first step, as we all understand, when the Buddha was enlightened, the very first thing that he said after gazing into the star, the one thing that he said was that it was wondrous that all sentient beings have inherent Buddha nature. They're all capable of achieving enlightenment and Buddhahood. And this is something that we all come to understand, because this is also something that Master had taught us, and we have seen this over and over and over written in the sutras. So we know this is very important, and we know this is also very true. And it's also very evident from the May 11th morning Dharma talk. Master said on the 11th, Master said that Buddha, with his powers, so obviously chapter 21 talks about the superpowers, or these powers that the Buddha has to be able to do all these wonderful things, okay? So Master was explaining what was one of the things that the Buddha was able to do in this chapter. To recap what happened before this, there were countless Buddhas coming from other worlds, okay? So Buddha, our Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, with his powers, can see infinitely countless millions and billions Buddhas, each seated on the lion thrones underneath jewel trees in the Saha world. So this is what Master explained, described, and trying to translate what was written in the sutra. And so Master continued, when in fact, in the eyes of the Buddha, our Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, everywhere he sees is magnificent. Every tree is jewel tree, and everyone that he sees is enlightened. And I think if you see this, you probably can agree to that there was a Jing aphorism that says, if you look at others with the heart of the Buddha, then everyone you see will be a Buddha, right? But if you look at others with the eyes or with the heart of the devil, then everyone you see will be like a devil. So in fact, what Master is telling us that in the eyes of the Buddha, everywhere he sees, even in the Saha world, everywhere he sees is magnificent, it's beautiful, is truly magnificent, right? And every tree is a jewel tree, and likewise, every location, every seat is a lion's throne, and everyone is enlightened. So that was the preface, okay? Step number one, everyone has the potential and has the inherent Buddha nature and has the potential to become the Buddha. That was step number one. However, step number two, that brought us back to reality. Even though all have inherent Buddha nature, even though all can achieve enlightenment and Buddhahood, so far, not many has succeeded. So when I said not many, yes, there are countless Buddhas. Yes, I know. But in proportion to the ones that are still afflicted, the proportion is completely way out of balance, right? So you have Buddha, right? Even in the past 2,500 years, you have one who achieved Buddhahood, and you have all of us who are continuing to be in this reincarnation cycle, right? So step number one tells you that everyone has the inherent Buddha nature, and everyone can achieve Buddhahood. Step two tells you that, yes, you can do that. Yes, you will do that, but you haven't done it. Okay, that's what step two is. It brought us back into a very, very strong reality. Okay, so, and this was very evident on the morning Dhamma talk on May 12th. As Master said, Buddha came to the Saha world with one great cause, and that is to teach the Great Lotus Sutra, the instructions for the Bodhisattvas, right? So what does that mean? What does that mean that the Buddha came to the Saha world with one great cause to teach the Great Lotus Sutra, which is the instruction for the Bodhisattvas? It means that Buddha, knowing that all sentient beings can become the Buddha, knowing that all sentient beings can have the potential, they have the potential to be enlightened, but they haven't. So the one great cause was to bring the teachings to all these beings, right? So seeing that all beings have the potential, but it's not enough. You only have the potential. You're not there yet. So the Great Lotus Sutra, or the instructions for the Bodhisattva path, is to bring everyone from can be enlightened or potentially enlightened to actually enlightened. And I think this is the very, very basic thing, right? Step one, you all have potential. Step two, you're not there yet, but you have the potential. So what do? I help you, bring you on the path to be on that path to completely explore and exploit your potential. That's what step two, the one great cause is, right? Coming to the world, knowing that everyone can be the Buddha, but none of you have become Buddha yet. Let the Buddha says, let me help you. Let me help you be enlightened. That's step number two. So this is really talking about how do you go from can be to be being. And that is the very important part. Is the Bodhisattva path takes you from potentially a Bodhisattva or a Buddha to become a Bodhisattva or a Buddha. So once again, step one, everybody can do it. Step two, no one has done it. So let me help you by becoming the one that you potentially can. Okay, so that's the first two steps. Very simple so far, very quickly going over, right? In less than 10 minutes, I've already explained what the first two steps are. But the third step is going to take a little bit more time. And this is going to be in conjunction with the question that was asked. So Master talked about, in I think 3 separate occasions, talking about something called the safe distance. There is a gap, there's a distance, and then stay close. So it's somewhat contradictory. But it's really not contradictory, okay? So maintaining a good distance, but stay close. What does that mean? This is our third step. Remember, what's the first step? The first step is recognizing everyone has the potential. Second step is recognizing none has achieved that potential. So the one who has achieved it came to teach us how do we do that. Okay, so the third step is maintaining a safe distance, but stay close. What does that mean? Let us continue. On May 12th, Master talks about we all needed some space, some distance to be able to see clearly. Thus, through space, we will be able to understand the principles. So let us first, by taking this apart, what does that mean to say we all need some space, some distance to be able to see clearly? Master told us that if you stick your face right on the mirror, you will not be able to see your features, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, you will not be able to see it. If you stick your face right up front, you will not be able to see your facial features correctly. Same thing. If you're pressing against the wall, you will not be able to see what is on the wall. So that's what Master is talking about. We all needed some space, some distance to be able to see clearly. Therefore, through space, we will be able to understand the principles. But is that it? Is that it? No, it's not it. Master said, by listening to the Buddha, okay, so this is now going back to not just the analogy, but the actual Buddha, right? The Buddha is an enlightened being guiding us. Guiding whom? A befuddled ordinary beings like us. We are lost, right? So the Buddha is an enlightened being guiding a group of befuddled ordinary beings that are lost. And the Buddha is sharing with us the principles that is in unison with the universe. It's a universal truth. It's the true principles that is so vast and deep and hard to understand by befuddled ordinary beings that are lost. So in reality, there is a huge gap between what the Buddha understands and what we understand. Even though we all have the potential to become the Buddha, there is still a huge gap. Okay, so Master continued to explain this gap. So in order to make up for this gap, what do? If you have someone who is higher and someone who is lower, it is harder for someone who is lower to come up to understand you. Rather, it's easier for someone who is higher up to come down to explain to you, right? That is why you see a lot of times it's the adult bending down to explain to the children. You don't see the children taking the stools to stand up tall to talk to their parents. It's not that way around because it's easier for someone who is higher to come down to talk to someone who is lower. Therefore, in order for someone who understood the universal truth to tell someone who doesn't quite understand, and there's a huge gap in between, the Buddha, and this is what Master said on the 12th, the Buddha hid these true principles and approached us on our level first. Approached us, coming down to our level, getting close to us, speak in ways that we can understand, do the things that we do, live how we live, so that he became one of us. He hid these true principles that he wanted to share and approach us on our levels first, just like a teacher who would bend down or kneel down to talk to a first grader, telling them, what's going on? Why are you crying? That's the exact same thing that the Buddha did to us because we don't quite understand yet. And so the Buddha came to us, approached us on our level, making up this difference in the gap, okay? So even though that there's a huge gap, and the Master said that you need distance and space to be able to see the principles clearly, the Buddha, this is what Master said on the 12th, the Buddha came to the Saha world with one great cause. We talked about this, right? It's to instructions for the Bodhisattva. He approached us first. Then when the time is right, taught us the true principles of the universe. Okay, so step 3 continue, right? First of all, we see something clearly from a distance. As I mentioned before, if you press yourself against the mirror, you cannot see. Same thing. If you have a book that is right on your eyes, you cannot read. You need a clear distance from the book to be able to see and observe and learn and understand all the intricacies. This is very important. The space is there so that you could see clearly from a distance, to observe, to learn, and to know all the details and intricacies. And then, when you are ready and prepared, you can practice and take action. You get in to experience, to learn again, to know the problems, and to find the answers to what you have just learned, to what you have just experienced. Let me give you an example, and this is something that I'm sure it will pertain to everybody. Learning how to drive, okay? Learning how to drive, for those of you, probably 80% of you or more know how to drive a car. Learning how to drive is the same thing. Why? You don't begin by jumping in and driving. You don't. You shouldn't, okay? Let me just put it that way. You shouldn't. If you do that, stop. That's you're endangering the public, okay? So you shouldn't do that, but usually people don't begin by driving the car to learn how to drive. What do? They go to a driving school and they don't get in the car right away. They understand the rules of the traffic, but it goes way before when you begin to learn how to drive. It started when you first time were in the car, when you're a baby, when you're little, the first time you're in the car, you watched people drive. You watched traffic signals before you even know how to speak, right? You're in the car, you're in the baby seat, and you see people drive. I remember when I was little, before I even know how to do math, I was doing this thing, right? I was doing the handle wheels, and I was doing the shift because my dad would always do manual transmission, and he was doing all this all the time. And that's what I do, right? I put an umbrella in the garbage can, and that's my stick, right? And then I do this. People do this, right? Before you were actually driving, you were already observing. You were watching people. You looked at people drive. You watch from a distance. You haven't drive yet. You are only watching and observe. You have a good idea of how the cars go. Even if you don't have a car, you have a toy car. You would just do zoom, zoom. You would play with it. That's what we learn, right? You learn these things before you get to drive. There's a safe distance between you and driving. That's what the distance is. It allows you to learn from a safe distance. You play your toy car, it doesn't hurt people. But if you don't know how to drive and you never touched it and you get in the car, that's dangerous. So stop, don't do that, right? So first, going from a distance allows you to see the knowledge and the principles. Very simple, safe distance. And then when you are ready, when you think you're ready, you will get into a car. Eventually, if you say you know how to drive, it's because you had driven before. It's not because you had read all the books about driving. It's because you drove. So eventually, after all the studies, after watching people on TV, people in the car, right next to you, right in front of you, you've driven them, you learn all the lessons there is to learn about the traffic laws. Eventually, you will need to drive to truthfully understand how to drive. And then you'll realize it's not so simple, right? All the things you learn, all the things that you're following your dad driving, or in the movie, they drive with one hand, right? And then they're doing all these things while they're driving, or they do crazy stunt moves in the movies. You realize you can't do that, right? It's hard. You see people talking on the phone and you try to do that, and please don't do that, right? So you realize it becomes a chaos. The first time that you had to manage all of it, right? Gas, brake, clutch, handling wheel, everything at the same time. You need to have, the first time it rains, I remember the day that I took my driving test, it started to rain. And I had never, in my practice, it had never rained before. So the examiner or my instructor who was grading me on the drive asked me to, now it's raining, what do you do? And I'm like, I didn't practice this, right? It's all chaos. You know that you're supposed to flip the switch so the window wipers come on, right? But did you remember that? No, because you had to look at the oncoming traffic, check the pedestrians, check the traffic light, make sure your foot is on the clutch or etc. Make sure you have both hands on the 10 o'clock and the 2 o'clock. Otherwise, you get points deducted, right? I don't know how you guys take your driving test, but that's what I did. So when it started raining, I didn't know what to do. It was chaotic, right? Isn't this all of this? Why is it chaotic? Because you know all these things. But when it meets practice, it's very different, right? You know all the things about driving. You learned it in the books, right? You know you need to signal about 50 meters before the traffic light. If you want to go left, signal. If you want to go right, right signal, and then slowly go to the right lane. You know all this, but why don't you do that? Because there's so many things that happen that don't go according to what you know, right? So it's going to be very chaotic. When the principle is very simple, right? Signal before you turn, changing lane, yes. But when it actually becomes practice for the first time, it doesn't work. It becomes chaotic, right? So Dharma is the same. That's what this is, right? Learning from a distance. You need that space to see and observe and learn first. And then we're supposed to be, having this virtue. We're supposed to know all the Dharma, right? All these cause and effect and the consequence. You're supposed to all make the vows. You're supposed to be very sincere. You're supposed to work very hard and diligent. You know all these things. And you even have the role models to learn after, right? You even have our master, our great, wonderful brothers and sisters, and all the sages and the great, wonderful Dharma masters in the past. That's all principle. That is all theory. That is all wonderful and good. But when the principle meets the practice, when someone in front of you is just pissing you off, what do? You shout at them. All the principles go out the window. Same thing. When you're supposed to hit the brake, what do? You hit the gas pedal. You know the principles, but it's hard. So you will learn from a safe distance. But when you truly learn it is when you actually practice it. It will all begin to be very chaotic, but it will eventually become simpler. Like now, you're driving. I'm sure you don't get in the car and you panic. You don't. You very simply turn the ignition. You very simply put the park onto the drive if it's auto transmission, and you just put your foot on the gas pedal and you go. No longer are you panicking when it began to rain. No longer are you panicking when somebody cut you off unexpectedly, because you already know. That is when the practice meets the principle for many, many times, and that's what you've learned, right? So at first, you're going to find it very difficult to do all the things that we're supposed to do, right? To be content, grateful, understanding, and accommodating, right? So all the space allows you to learn the principles. Imagine if you got in the car right away, it would be very difficult to learn all the principles of the road, the traffic signals, because you will be handling all the chaos. That will be hard. That is why when you first start your job in a different city, what do? You give yourself a week before your job started to get a better understanding of the surroundings. So you're not too estranged from all the places around you when you start your work. Same thing. You learn from a safe distance, the gap that is in between, so that you will be able to have a more time to get used to the idea and the principles. Because when the practice hits, it will be very chaotic. It will be very difficult. And people will be saying that, why can't I do this? I learned this in the Dharma, but I can't do this. Why, right? It will be difficult. But with enough practice, patience, and also guidance, people sitting in the driver's seat telling you, watch out, someone is cutting you off. Watch out your blind spot, making sure you flip your switches. With enough people doing that and encouragement, good job. There was no accident, good job, right? When you do that, you will succeed. And that's what this is, right? Step 1, everybody has the potential to drive. Step 2, not everybody has the driver's license. Step 3, Learn from a distance first, then practice. And merge the principles and the practice, right? Don't jump to practice before you learn, and do not stay so far away that you don't practice. That was the key, okay? So this is analogous to the lotus flower and the mud as well. So the space and touch, from the beginning we talked about, right? The Buddha had to bring down his level to get to us, to reduce the space. But eventually, when we're ready, he rose back up to his high level and explained to us his visions and his ideas and his thoughts. And that space becomes our cultivation to arise, to meet him. No longer is he down with us anymore, but he rises above us and expecting us to reach up to him. That's what the first 42 years was doing. First 42 years is to be with us. And then he rises above. And then he challenged us to go up and meet him. That's the last 7 years of the teachings. So you need the space and you need the practice. And eventually, that's how you do. Come down to teach us. So there's no space. But when eventually it comes, you need to meet the principles and the practice. Same thing with the lotus flower and the mud. The lotus flower will extract the nutrients from the mud, but not becoming the mud itself. That's very key. We are here to extract the nutrients, all the wisdom there is for us in the Saha world, but we are not going to be entangled in this world, right? And this is the same thing that Master taught us before, especially I remember very clearly to the Malaysian charity team, because Master's talked about giving us one example that yes, we need to help our charity cases. We need to be empathetic and sympathetic. Empathy means I feel what you feel. Sympathy is I feel bad about what you're feeling, okay? So one is to feel you. One is to feel sympathetic. I feel bad, I feel hurt, I feel pain about how you're feeling. But we also need to pull ourselves out. We are not completely in. They're suffering because of their affliction. We should not suffer their affliction too. That is called lotus flower and the mud. That charity case is the nutrients that we need. That charity case helped us to help them and help us to develop our own sense of compassion and sense of responsibility. But we cannot be sucked into their affliction and begin to wonder about, yes, then what do I do? You become to be very, very much afflicted like them, okay? So pull yourself out too. So once again, with enough distance, but you go in. So that sounds to be contradictory, but it's really not, okay? So that was a really, really long step that I just explained, right? Gap and together, right? Steps. So let's review what we talked about so far. Step one, all sentient beings have the Buddha nature and all can achieve Buddhahood, right? Step two, not many have succeeded. That's the truth. So the Bodhisattva path, the one great cause was for Buddha to come to the world and tell us how do we go from having potential to becoming actually the Buddha, right? How do you do that? Step three, maintain safe distance, but stay close. Maintain a safe distance to observe the ordinary beings, but stay close, right? Step four, pick a topic that pertains to everyone, something that everyone can experience and understand, to share, to go in, right? So you observe from afar, you see what they are talking about, and then you go in to talk about the topic that everybody understands. And what is that? Suffering. That's why it's the first noble truth, because that's what everybody understands. Why? Because that's the specialty of our world. Our world is full of suffering. And to go in other words, in other worlds, perhaps it's not suffering that gave the one great cause. Remember, the one great cause is to come to help everybody become the Buddha. The one great cause isn't to come to reduce the suffering. Suffering is the medium that the Buddha says What is the one thing that everybody understands? And that's when the Buddha says, I am going to go in with suffering. And that's why it's the suffering as the first noble truth. It's the tool that was used. So thanks to one of the questions that was asked, and I really enjoyed this question. Okay, so the question was, in the Xun Fa Xiang, we heard that it was, the state of the Buddha, the sentient beings could not realize this state, right? The vast sufferings, etc., right? So all the Buddhas will expound the Lotus Sutra. But does that mean that all have to come to the Saha world to explain? Because that's where the suffering is. And this is my belief, okay? It's not 100% true. I don't really know. But from what I understand, from what I see, in this world, our world, in the Saha world, this is a world of suffering. And the suffering is something that every sentient being here on this world experience and understand. So the Buddha sees that everyone can achieve Buddhahood, but because we're so afflicted that we can't. So how do you teach us? How do you bring a universal truth down to our level so that we can understand? You have to find something that's common to all of us that we can all understand. That is called suffering. That is called relief of suffering. That's when the Bodhisattva came out and say, we will do the relief of suffering. That was to help us understand, right? So in other worlds, which I'm not there, I don't know, maybe there are other common language that they understand. I don't know. But in our world, it's definitely suffering. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking. That's how I explain this. So I want to get into another question before I finished. And this is the question that was from a while ago. So Master said to overcome this COVID-19 crisis. So there are so many videos on climate crisis on FB, on Facebook to encourage people. But there's no one bother, right? So there's so many likes for people posting their steak and roasted pork, etc. What can I do next? Good question, right? Good question. Let's think about the 4 steps, right? First 4 steps. Believe all can be vegetarian. Everyone can be a vegetarian. You must believe it. If you think that, this one is hopeless, can't be vegetarian, then you lose the hope already. You believe everybody. If you work hard enough, if you are sincere enough, if you have a group of people to influence that person, we can all be vegetarian. Believe it, right? That's the first step. Second, observe from a distance, right? Why are they not vegetarian? What is their problem? Do they like the taste? Do they not like the taste, or do they like the taste of the meat? Is it because of convenience? Is it because of not knowing some facts about life, about humanitarian, about compassion, about animals' rights, about environmental issues, about the earth? Why? Why are they not? What was their obstacle? Observe from a distance. Third, safe distance. Don't jump in and say, you are sin because you eat meat. No, safe distance, but keep close. Always engaging, telling them why, telling them it's good, telling them the bad things about being a meat eater, and etc., right? Maintaining safe distance, don't clash with them, but keep close. Always engage with them, right? And pick a relatable and sympathetic topic. You realize that they have pets. You realize that they really like to help some stray dogs. Then you explain to them, this dog is just like that pig. Same thing, it's alive. Pick a relatable and sympathetic topic so that they could understand. So that's what this is all about, right? Think about all chapter 20. It's all the same thing. The final 7 years, all these Lotus Sutra teachings so far, it's really talking about 1, everybody can become the Buddha. 2, why aren't they yet? 3, well then what do you do about it? And 4, find some topic that you can share and slowly drag them in, and then they will understand. It's a very long process, and Master in the last few days of the morning Dharma talk expressed how difficult it is. Very, very difficult. But the path are already there. It's lined out for you. It's very structured. Find out, believe. First, you must believe that everybody can. Second, why not? There must be a reason that's blocking you. Some of you could be greed, could be anger, could be ignorance. It could be any of the poisons. Find out why, because everybody's different. Then third, maintaining safe distance while engaging, continuously engaging, but maintaining a safety distance. Fourth, pick a topic that you can understand. If you're talking to someone who is really, so in our world, suffering is the common word. Suffering is something that we can all share. So you share suffering to someone in Africa. You would take them to see charity case, and then they realize they are very fortunate. Or here in the very fortunate places, you take them to see a charity case, and then they go like, oh my goodness, I own so much. All these are common and relatable things that they can understand, and then go from there. Okay, so we're gonna be covering more because the Master showed us and shared with us even more steps beyond that. So today I'm gonna only share the first 4 and hopefully answer some of the questions that some of you might ask. I really think that suffering was picked because it's pertaining to our world. We all feel it. In other worlds where there is no suffering, their Buddha also expound the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is about telling, teaching, and instructing people to how do they become enlightened. In our world, the common knowledge, the common phrase and language, it's called suffering. In other worlds, I don't know. But in our world, Buddha chose this language and formed a path and road for us. That was a road, that was path, that was specific to our Saha world. In other worlds where I haven't been to, I don't know. But this is the world that we're in. And this is the path that we're on. And we're very grateful for the Buddha and our Master to make sure that we're on this path, on step 1, 2, 3, 4. And there are more to come. So let's wait for more morning Dharma talks to lead us on this path. Thank you. That's my sharing for today. Thank you.
For Gan Brother Joe, truly amazing. I'm sure everyone is as engrossed as me, if not more. There are lots still in Brother Joe's sleep. Those who have been following closely Brother Joe to, I think, Indonesia and many places across the world, we would have heard so much. And indeed, in every morning, wisdom at dawn, Master has given us so much. So let us continue to 加油, 熏法香 daily and listen to this wonderful sharing. Most gratitude. Okay, today we are very grateful to have Sister June Chow and Sister Stephanie to share with us. Sister June on her journey to vegetarian. And okay, over to you, Sister June first, right before Sister Stephanie. Gan En.
Hi, good morning, brothers and sisters. Very grateful to have a chance to share with you my journey to vegetarianism. So how it all started was in August 2018. I was actually diagnosed with prediabetes. So the doctor wanted to put me on medication. And so I was just so, I just didn't want to go on medication. So then what happens was I did diet modification. I actually cut out a lot of red meat. So that's the start to everything. And then last year in June, my home brother actually turned vegetarian because he was due for his commissioning trip in October. So I thought to show support, then, you know, I have to start having a bit more vegetarian meals, right? And it's good for my health. And then the third thing is when my mom was diagnosed with cancer in November, I was actually enlightened by one of a friend who's also a PCBC parent who told me, who suggested that I actually go on full vegetarian meal to actually ease the karmic debt for my mom. Although I'm of a different faith, karma is actually not an alien concept, and it's actually very much science as well. It's Newton's third law of motion, where it states that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So come this year, at the peak of the coronavirus in Wuhan, my daughter's kindy, 大爱幼儿园, actually had this project. So for every day, if someone in the household observe full vegetarian meal, they get to remove a dot, which is like a virus. And the aim is to actually clean the whole world map of the dot. So every day, every evening, she'll come back and ask, Mommy, how many people has actually, how many dots can I remove tomorrow? So she was very excited when the number went from 2 to 5 to 7. And then she was always like, why is it not 8? Because we have 8 people in the household. So then finally one day she got 8. She was really, really happy. And then I think the final straw for me was during the lockdown of Malaysia, during the MCO in March. And at that point, I was thinking, okay, this is my little bit that I can play to actually, make the world a better place. And incidentally, I don't think it's coincidence that coronavirus is actually an anagram for carnivorous. Okay. And next, please. The next reason is actually environment. In the Bible, it says, love one another. When you love one another, it's actually not just about our family, about the people we love. It's also about the earth, because that's the only hope that we have. So by going vegetarian, I'm actually trying to reduce carbon footprint, and bring a balance. So it's like we are actually coexisting with the other animals, and we have to look after this earth for our children and our children's children. So it's a partnership with the other beings rather than an ownership. And thirdly, from an economic point of view, if everybody goes on a vegetarian diet, the world would essentially save about 1.4 trillion from direct and indirect health benefits as well as environmental costs. Okay, has this been an easy journey? Yes and no. No, because initially when I was embracing it, I wasn't embracing it wholeheartedly. I was counting the meals, filling up my carts, and my objective was like, okay, I need to fill up the carts, 108 vegetarian meals. However, when I actually embrace it wholeheartedly and realize the reason why I'm doing it, then it's a lot easier. Then the journey became smooth because I realized this is the only way. It's like how Brother Joe talked about the merger of principle and practice. So this is the alignment of it. Then it became very, very easy. And what are some of the observations after I've gone on a vegetarian meal? My family is very, very supportive. The children and my parents are just wonderful. My mom is, I think 95%, if not 100% vegetarian. And her health actually improved quite a fair bit. She's finished her last cycle of chemo just 2 weeks ago, and she doesn't have much of the side effects, touch wood. And my kids, they're just good. I think they are at least 6 days out of 7. Me and my home brother are of the opinion that we don't want to force. It's just like those 4 points that Brother Joe pointed out. We would, find stories for them to tell them why they need to do it. Because if it doesn't come from them, it's not sustainable. So, and also from this whole experience, I've actually become more creative in terms of cooking, where we engage the kids in cooking vegetarian meals, making the substitution. Everything is actually possible. And also within the Tzu Chi family, it's also a very good support group where we share recipes and how do we substitute and what are the nutritional benefits for vegetarian people who are on vegetarian meals. And I think these are just this is just my family. And then next slide, please. Can I have the next slide? These are just some of the meals that I've actually cooked throughout the MCO with the kids, or and sharing with the community. And lastly, okay, given our level of sophistication, this sentence really resonates with me. Eating meat is actually a choice rather than a necessity. And also, for those who are actually still hanging by the fence or sitting by the fence, whether you want to go vegetarianism, from my personal experience is this: the minute you have your resolve, like what Master always say, 有愿就有力, I think everything can happen. So I would like to end here with a quote from Einstein: nothing will benefit human health and increase chances for survival of life on earth as much as the evolution for a vegetarian diet. Gan En for the sharing, and 祝福大家. Yes, thank you.
Much, Gan En. Firstly, I'd like to praise to the three treasures, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And Gan En very much for the affinity to do a sharing this morning. And I've also would like to say thank you, Sister June. She's our committee of our parent-child bonding class. Gan En to her for coming on board to share with us this morning. And okay, I'll try to share, continue from there on. Okay, my sharing about vegetarianism. Okay, promoting vegetarianism, sorry. Okay, I'd like to start with basically one of the days where I heard Master Morning Assembly on the 14th of April. And it was very touching, yeah. The Master says that the entire world is covered by this pandemic right now. And to Master, it seems like love is very lacking in the world right now. And Master went on to say those who lack love are more than those who receive love. So we must awaken love in people's hearts to cover the world. And that's much needed right now. And Master hopes that, yeah, as Master went on, she says, Master hopes that the rich can eat 80% full and use 20% to help others, because there are many people who are hungry, yet many wants to lose weight. So if we can give just 1%, not even 20%, we actually can create blessing. And to me, this time around, I noticed Master have said, accumulation drop by drop. Every day she's saying that, you know, drop by drop we can accumulate this blessing. Like every day, that what we do, you know, the bamboo bank. So Master went on to talk about, you know, she illustrated drops cannot be seen in the air, but it can moisten the land and it can be collected into buckets of water. You know, she was giving an example of the tea plantation in Tiai. So drop by drop, love can be awakened in people as well, you know, to come together to create blessings with sincere actions. And because only by accumulating blessings can we mitigate disaster. The only way, Master says, from the very start is to sincerely adopt a vegetarian diet. Then only is a true sign of repentance. And Master has reiterated many, many times, only a sincere vegetarian practice will eliminate disaster. So there I was, you know, on that morning, and I was sitting there. It was MCO, and we have been locked down. There are not many activities that we can do. In fact, there was none. A lot of activities was already ported online. So I'm sitting there wondering, how can I, you know, I was trying to promote vegetarianism, and I think Brother Joe, the question came in just now very timely. Yeah, a lot of us actually face a lot of obstacles, including myself. All right, and I was thinking, okay, how can I then accept Master's calling, you know, to promote vegetarianism, awaken love, and create blessings at the same time? How can I be that one extra drop of dew every day? So I'm thinking, okay, in my environment right now, I cook every day. I cook vegetarian meals for my kids, my family every day. So what if I cook extra to give to the people around me that I feel they need? So I zoom it down to the guards in my housing area. So there are 6 of them. So I decided then and then, okay, today I'm just going to take small portions. So that's what I did. I said, okay, because other people has obstacles, I will not let the conditions stop me for now. So I'll just continue to do that. So from there on, this is what I do every day, you know, apart from preparing for my family, I prepare extra 6. Yeah, and at the same time, I also noticed it is actually a very good opportunity for my kids to create blessings and to learn to treat others equally. And why do I say that? Because the kids actually, they learn that, you know, we can share whatever we eat with others. Yeah, mommy doesn't cook extra special meals for us and give other things to other people. So I think it's a good practice no matter what, right? So on that morning, I just very quickly, on that morning, I called the chief guard and I say, okay, I want to do this for you because the vegetarian diet is good to boost your immune system, to keep all of you healthy this period. So I'll cook lunch for you every day. Is that okay? Then he says, great, thank you, ma'am, you know. So that's my first preparation, right? The first meal. And I wish them peaceful and healthy, I explained to them. So after 6 days, you know, I decided, okay, I think we have enough of affinity to talk Tzu Chi, all right? So I grabbed hold of all the tools that I needed, and I used the ever reliable, I hope, Google Translate to translate whatever I wanted to say, because the guards, they didn't really speak good English and they can understand Malay. So I also gave him a bamboo bank and say the beginning of Tzu Chi comes from the bamboo bank. And I hope every day before they accept the meal or take the meal, everybody can put any amount into this bamboo bank, make a good wish, sincere wish, simple enough, all right? So a simple practice, basically, no hassle. And they did that. You know, although sometimes it doesn't come back with a lot of money, I find that no expectation. Of course, I did tell this chief gardener I was a volunteer and a donor as well. And my mate is also a donor, but I didn't ask him to be a donor yet because, I just want to take it easy. But surprisingly, that evening when he came back, he took out $15 for me. And he said, ma'am, I also want to help, $15 a month. I was so happy. I quickly went in to take the donor form, asked him to fill up, and I took out the Jing aphorism and asked him pick one, which he did. And this is what he picked. The more you give, the more you accomplish. And when I tried to explain it to him, he was very happy, So from there on, it actually bolstered my aspiration to transform all the guts by let them partake in 30 days of vegetarian, lunch at least, and to become Tzu Chi donors. And so from there on, drop by drop, one drop to the second drop, third drop, fourth drop. And finally, because of NCO, I couldn't really go out. And finally, on the day the NCO was lifted, I said, okay, I'm going to meet all of them at the park where they have their morning assembly. So I went to talk to the rest of the 3 guards. So there are 7 of them altogether. So this is why I resonated with this time. Master keeps saying, I think Master have been saying it for many years, but this time it really resonated with me because we can't go out, but yet how do we? And Master used the word no, 不要加加减减, no plus plus minus minus, but continuously, do it, all right, every day. So okay. So then after the 1 month period, they say it's okay if we don't have to cook for them. Very strange, they also came and say it's okay, don't have to cook for them. So I decided, okay, where should I go next? And then the opportunity came when we carried out the care line distribution. And so I quickly prepared lunch. I quickly tried to do the care line distribution to coincide with lunchtime. I prepared lunch and went out, to see this group of people that we have to distribute to. So after explaining to them, and so happened in this distribution, I met a young boy, John, he's 15 years old, and he was perfect in his English because he goes to a Christian school nearby, yeah? So he became my interpreter. So having promoted to them about vegetarianism, the bamboo bank, and then we even asked, the recipients what they feel. But a lot of them actually say, okay, I will give when I'm rich. So then we tell them that you don't have to give when you're rich. You can give when you have no money, giving a smile, giving help. And then I took them, because they live nearby our recycle station, I took them to the recycle station. I said, you can serve and give here, when our recycle station opens. Oh, and then the next day, we heard about, that morning, we heard Master sharing about Myanmar, Pusas, they printed the Jing aphorism on the rice bags. So I thought, sorry? So how can I do that in a smaller scale? All right, how can I do that? So I prepared lunch for the next distribution, and I printed these Myanmarese words because I know the next batch, they don't really understand at all. So I tried to print this onto the packs of rice that I prepared that morning for lunch. So I went there, the second distribution, and called the boy John, and I said, can you help? Since you say, since I told you yesterday, you can actually help without money. Can you help to interpret, to speak to these people that I'm distributing to? And you see here, John is via video call. Actually, he's helping me to interpret whatever I needed to say to the next batch. So all in all, it was very, very, we managed to get whatever message they wanted to across and make them really understand about where this money comes from. It's from the heart of loving heart of everybody. So, and to practice vegetarian, why do we need to do that? I'm really very thankful for this, all the brothers sisters who connected globally, in this time, and learn from them, right? Of course, this thing that we have been doing since last year, actually, we've been using technology to promote vegetarian. You can see this is my FB page. It's actually, this one is more of sharing earth-friendly options, options, for those non-vegetarians with friends and public. I try to put in the, the options that and their nutritional value, all right? So, and make it very, look very interesting, And then, Yeah, you can see here all the options, like omega is a clean source of, chia is a clean source of omegas, you know, and the tauge, we call it now, the bean sprout, is bursting with potassium and vitamin C. And then we also have this cooking dharma, which we started. This is a WhatsApp app, yeah, we started last year with our Jing sisters. Yeah, basically this one is more to share our home recipes and cooking tips with our Dharma family, because actually we also realize not all of our families are vegetarians, and this is really important so that we can continue to cook, entice them, you know, so to speak, with our cooking, right? And very thankful, a lot of sisters share, you know, their tips and all that, and really see that Sister Irene especially, even though she didn't know how to cook, yeah, she really learned and she really tried her best to use this platform to encourage her home brother to take on, you know, vegetarian meals, because he is not receptive at all at first. Okay, we also had another platform which reaches out to the younger maybe the younger group to Instagram, and this one we do it very nicely. I actually seek one sister in Singapore who is also doing her GNC now, and to ask her to use her skills, yeah, to help us manage this site. And so far, we have 71 followers, but this came very timely. You see, this drop by drop, yeah, came very timely when our Tzu Chi wanted to promote vegetarianism, and I direct them to this link, and I say, use whatever you want to promote your Tzu Chi page with everything here. And they were so happy to say, yeah, this is so wonderful. We don't have to, you know, look for it. Yeah, so you see, when you start something good, drop by drop, you know, daily, you can see that it will come to a place where it can demonstrate its power. So I want to come to a few points. As Brother Chin always reminds us as our practice as a householder, yeah, these are the points that I get from Master. We accumulate drop by drop, ceaselessly. We don't do plus, plus, minus, minus. But even if we do plus, plus, minus, minus, make sure it's a clean minus. If today we are arrogant, let's try to be a bit humble, a bit more humble. If today we find that we are lazy, let's try to be a bit more hardworking. If today we are a bit more angry, let's try to be a little more patient. That's how I do it, you know, because I know we are not perfect. And because it takes 10,000 good deeds to just get one virtuous marks, you know, of the Buddha. So you can imagine. And my master says in one of the days, even noble being comes from ordinary being. And I remember this saying when I was a teenager: a big shot is a small shot that keeps shooting. So do not give up. I'm definitely a small shot, you know, but I will keep on shooting. Yeah, Mahasattvas also come from Bodhisattvas, right? And what really take comfort in is even Devadatta's predictions of Buddhahood that Master expounded to us in chapter 20. Devadatta definitely is still suffering in hell, possibly right now. He too can become a Buddha. So take comfort in that. But as we have learned from Never Slighting Bodhisattva, who we found out at the end, he's actually Sakyamuni Buddha. Transformation will take incalculable kalpas. Therefore, please, all of us must not give up. Yeah, and I know you're not going to give up, but not feel disheartened. I want to share very quickly. I want to share this very simple analogy. This kid, I talked to him about cherishing water because I learned about this years ago, yeah, when I started to join Tzu Chi, how we can cherish water. Just simple action. I think Master says use a cup to brush teeth, and then he listened and then he practiced. On top of that, we also practice this. Yeah? When he shower, he will stand inside the bucket and then keep the shower water, the grey water, to use as to flush the toilet. So he was 4 when he practiced this. Okay, and he practiced until today. He's 17. No, actually, he's my son. Okay, until today, 17. And I asked him that day, why do you continue to practice? So he said, because it's my habit, mommy. I said, why do you practice this habit then? He said, because it's a good thing to do. So, okay, you see, when you practice like that, I told him, you have accumulated drop ceaselessly over 13 years. Every day, he doesn't stand in the bucket right now. He stand around the bucket. All of us do that at home. Yeah. Let's just do a simple calculation. One day you save 3 liters, times that by 365 days, times that by 13 years, because you're 17 right now, you have saved about 14,000 liters of water. 1,000 is equivalent to 1 ton lorry. So let's make a quick assessment. Maybe it's equivalent to 14 lorries, 14 1-ton lorries per person in the family. So I'm saying, so if you continue to do this for the next another 30 years, can you imagine, you know? Okay, this is what we do at home. Like, okay, we not only do that, accumulate our grey water, we also accumulate the washing machine water, you know, the washing of veggie water, the rice water, all the water, because Master keeps saying, you have to cherish water. So, because if you can have a look here, the lake, Chad, one of the largest lakes in the world, from an oasis, it has turned into a desert. So, the principles are actually the same. It transcends time and space. We don't necessarily say, okay, I want to fill up Lake Oasis, but the principle is the same, right? We can apply it, all right? And, this brother shared the other day, you know, this brother Xiao, 2017 when he went to Africa, that is the Victoria Falls. 2019, this is the Victoria Falls. Can you have a look? There's no more Victoria Falls. So everywhere around the world, in fact, Master mentioned of India, we are facing storm in one side and devastating drought on another side of the continent. So if we can practice these true principles, okay, definitely by applying true principles in our daily life, the world can heal. Maybe not directly into these places, right? But it can heal. So I want to conclude my presentation today by coming to the Master mentioned a few things that she was grateful for all the time. She's very grateful for the great disaster lesson. She has mentioned many, many times she's grateful for technology advancement. And she's so grateful to be able to speak the Dharma, chapter 21, spiritual powers of the Tathagatas, and to see the demonstration of these spiritual powers by the living Bodhisattvas. And she is grateful for the Buddha's one true vehicle, Great Dharma. And truly, throughout this time, throughout this MCO, even before the MCO started, I felt COVID has come here to give us a great lesson. I don't know, I told somebody it's a great lesson, but I don't know how great this lesson is going to be. And as it unfolds, I can see how great, how wondrous this time, this opportunity, this affinity can be. And because this is really the time, all of us are suffering from the same suffering, and all of us can resonate with the same suffering. And this is a time to awaken sentient beings to the true principles, true universal principles taught by the Buddha, by all of us turning the great Dharma wheel. As you can see, all the brothers and sisters, all the great Pusas in all around the world, they are all turning this great Dharma wheel, the great machinery, simultaneously. And I think that is why Master feels so joyful and energized by this. And I can see that, you know, she's so grateful for all of this, you know, even especially during Buddha Day celebration. And definitely what she's mentioned all the time, and I feel the same, we must seize this opportunity, these affinities right now, these conditions right now, because when the MCO passes by, the conditions will no longer be the same. So with that, I would like to end my presentation and say, let's not think so difficult. Let us just be that one drop of dew every day. Gan En.
Okay, thanks very much to very powerful sharings. Before our master left, the master asked me to convey the sense of gratitude and the message that yes, indeed, it is every dew, every drop of dew, every additional drop of dew is what we need. So thanks to Sister Stephanie and also Sister June. For Sister June, obviously, best wishes to the health of your family and also yourself, for all of us to be healthy, and vegetarian is a very good way to achieve that health. That is the common language that is spoken by many people. So sharing an idea and a concept and principle requires that common knowledge, right? Common language. And for Sister Stephanie, I think you just hit it on the nail. You hit a nail on the head. You basically not only understand the principle, but you actually applied it. And I loved it when you mentioned about how you cook the additional things by thinking, what is that extra, do every day? Well, let me do one more thing. And I think that was the idea. The Bodhisattva path is a direction. It doesn't tell you to do A, B, or C, but it's an idea of inspiration because you have that love and your wisdom come from that love. And I really think that that is the superpower. So I've been thinking about, through what Master talks about in chapter 21, talks about the Tathagata super, the powers. And many people, at first, it was talking about the ability to see, to eat, to hear, to say, to do all these things. But I think towards the end, I think his Master is talking more about the true power is to be able to do this continuously. Even though we as ordinary beings are so slow to understand and so slow to learn, and he still continued to believe that he could teach us and change us. Just like what you said, right? A big shot is a small shot that keeps shooting. So the main power isn't that he sees the truth in the universe, but the main power is that after he sees the truth and after he sees that we're so far from it, that he's still willing to stay with us and teach us, even though we're making so small a step, that he's still willing to teach us and guide us, just like our Master, even though, and yes, I would agree with Sister Stephanie that Master is happy, but I would say that we're not doing enough. No, if we can do one more thing, okay, and now you've done your one more thing, now you can tell this to one more person, and then they can do one more thing, and then it will multiply on and on. So we all have our work cut out for us. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. The time is a little bit over, but I'm sure it will be filled with joy and dharmic joy. Thank you so much, and let's wish everybody a wonderful week ahead. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Gan En, so much words of gratitude. Can't express enough. Gan En, Brother Joe, Sister June, Sister Stephanie for such wonderful, heartfelt sharing. Indeed, let us pray that each of us be that extra deal. There's still much for us to do, like what Brother Joe said. Yes, I'm sure everyone can do more. I myself must be reminded as well. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your great presence today, for your great support. Hope that each of us could sustain the Dharma joy and take in another piece of Dharma Master and Hualien love to our life. Let us please make 3 vows to the Buddha and Dharma Master as we depart to apply these teachings in our daily life. Let us pay our respects to our teachers of life, universal truth. Vows together. First vow. Second vow. Third vow. And a bow to our beloved Sifu who could join us today. Okay. Gan En, everyone. See everyone next Saturday. Gan En.
Gan En,
Bye.
bye. Gan En, everybody. Gan En, my Brother Joe. Gan En,
Actually, see everyone at Voucher Pick tomorrow morning. Daily. Gan En.